What's going on, everybody? Avatar here, and today we have another build video. And of course, with episode Heresy came new aspects. We wanted to hop on our Titan today, as you saw, because of the Storm's Keep aspect just looked and sounded way too good to be true, especially when you pair it with the new verbiage with bolt charge. When you accumulate those arc bolt charges just from sustained damage, and then it basically generates a giant lightning bolt where you're shooting or where you do damage at all with any grenades or anything like that. So of course we're hopping on a pure arc build right now using Storm's Keep. This is phenomenal, not just for like add dense activities, but also just utter damage output as well. So when you cast your class ability, you grant a moderate amount of bolt charge stacks to you and nearby allies. We're gonna pair that with Knockout. If you notice from the thumbnail, Insurmountable Skull Fort Season 1 exotic is making a return, finally, to be somewhat viable. And why not punch stuff? We're Titans, right? Okay, so everyone knows Knockout, when you're critically wounded, a target or breaking their shields, basically gives you better melee range and damage, and defeating targets with melee attacks makes you amplified and restores a portion of your health. Amplified just got a little bit of a rework too, so where not only do you have that increased movement and weapon speed, but you also have a little bit of damage reduction as well. So what are we going to be pairing it with? Grenade wise, do whatever you want. I'm doing flashbangs because it blinds non-boss enemies and it stuns unstoppable. So if you're playing in-game content that has those, super helpful on that. But we're pairing our exotic Insurmountable Skull Fort with Thunderclap. Reason being is Ballistic Slam's a ton of fun, Seismic Strike's also a ton of fun, but Thunderclap is more ease of use, clears out a bunch of ads, or single ads at a time, just whatever you want to do. It's just easier for you to proc it. So basically when you're grounded, you charge up your fist and you throw a giant lightning punch out at people, and it does some pretty solid damage. So why are we using Insurmountable Skull Fort? Basically what this is going to do is final blows with arc melee will trigger health regen, which just stacks on top of actually having Knockout on, but it's going to fully restore your melee charge. As you see in this gameplay, it is insane. And melee hits that don't actually finish the target will still grant you arc energy for your melee back. And then we didn't touch on it yet, but we're using Rally Barricade for our Storm's Keep. Reason being is you can shoot over it, helps you stay alive, but at the same time, it has a base 38-second cooldown compared to Towering Barricades, larger cooldown of 110 plus, or minute and 10, and you can't even shoot over the top of the damn thing. Super wise, kind of go whatever you want. If you're doing low end content, Fist of Havoc's a ton of fun, but I just love Thunder Crash, especially here in the Nether. You just do a chunk of damage on any target you want to, or kill a bunch of ads all at once. Now let's talk about the fragments. So we're going to be using Spark of Discharge because arc weapon final blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. And what an ionic trace does is going to travel along the ground. Basically, when you pick it up, it grants ability energy, and collecting an ionic trace grants you a stack of bolt charge. Then we're going to be using Spark of Amplitude because rapidly defeating targets while you're amplified will create an orb of power. And since we're going to be punching a lot of stuff, doing a lot of arc damage, we're going to be amplified a ton. And then Spark of Resistance because being surrounded, let's just get some better increased damage resistance. Why not? Especially in the Nether where health is a resource. It's nice just to have a little bit more damage reduction with that paired with the damage reduction that we're going to get from being amplified in general. Lastly, we're using Spark of Ions. So defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an ionic trace. Just further building back into our abilities, getting them up as quickly as possible. Weapon-wise, you already know Thunderlord is going to be the go-to. This thing has an intrinsic trait called Rain Havoc, where final blows of this weapon generate stunning lightning from above, and lightning strikes grant a bolt charge stack as well. And it does stun overload champions if you're doing in-game content. And it's actually still really good for some DPS encounters as well. Obviously, there's things that outperform it, but if you don't have certain things, Thunderlord is always a good thing to keep in your back pocket. Next, we are going to be using a Void weapon because I'll talk a little bit about the artifact perks, but we're building heavy into Arc and Void. So we threw on Grid Skipper with Repulsor Brace to stabilizing rounds. You could get this with a lot of different Void weapons from Reckless Oracle, the what is that fucking fusion, or what do you call that thing? The riposte from Crucible, that's the one. The Garden of Salvation hand cannon, you can get it from, needless to say, there's a bunch of different options that you can use with repulsor brace and destabilizing rounds. Even if you want to do something from Onslaught like the Recluse, you definitely can. But these pair really well together. Defeating a target creates a void burst. Hitting other targets with that burst will make them volatile and grant you volatile rounds. And then repulsor brace, defeating void debuff targets just grants you an overshield. So you really can't go wrong with extra survivability. Then lastly, we're tossing on a glaive just because one, they did get a heck of a buff, but two, there's a pretty solid artifact perk option that you can use with it as well. So why not take advantage of it at the same time? Now let's talk about the artifact perks that we want to be using. First up, if you have access to the last column for this build, we went with Void Flux. So when you defeat targets with a void weapon, it applies volatile to nearby targets. And then powerful targets increase the radius of the explosion. Basically just makes our destabilizing rounds that much better. Next, we are using Dreadful Finisher because defeating powerful combatants with your finisher spawns special ammo for you and your allies. Defeating subjugators or tormentors and champions spawn more ammo, and in the Nether there is a lot of tormentors and subjugators that you can fight. Next, we're going to be using Maligned Harvest. Rapidly applying volatile causes your next instance of void weapon damage to create a weakening burst. Then we're going to be using Flashover. When you gain a maximum bolt charge stack, you also become amplified, and lightning bolts deal even more damage. Here's a double whammy. We're using Hold the Line for two reasons, because we're using a melee or a machine gun and a glaive. When you're surrounded, you gain increased reload speed and stability, but final blows heal you. So that we have two options to use that with the melee or with the glaive or even with our Thunderlord. Next, we're going to be using Dielectric. So defeating arc debuff targets grant bolt charge, anything that we jolt with basically. Next, we're going to be using Overlock and Load, which while you're amplified or you have bolt charge, arc weapons gain increased handling and reload, which is really nice for Thunderlord. Then we're going to be using Volatile Marksman. This says rapid void weapon precision hits and rapid weapon final blows grant you volatile rounds. So yeah, it is kind of redundant with destabilizing rounds and void flux, but at the end of the day, it just helps us keep up our volatile rounds a lot better. Plus, it does have a boost where volatile detonations grant class ability energy, which just pairs back into our use of bolt charge. So as you can see through this entire build, it is one, a ton of fun. You can create a fair amount of orbs, do a ton of damage with your super, with your Thunderlord, not to mention the sheer amount of bolt charge you will be able to use from this and just clear out enemy after enemy after enemy, but at the same time doing a substantial amount of damage. I'm super excited to take a build like this into a Grandmaster or a solo dungeon for certain encounters. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. Obviously, there's different ways you can use this. You don't need to use this specific weapon setup. You can tweak the fragments, you can tweak the mods or anything like that. And of course, for mods, we will be running Heavy Ammo Finder to get our heavy ammo more often, as well as an Arc Siphon for more arc. Then we're going to be using Heavy Handed to create Orbs of Light off of our melee, Fastball for further grenades, and then Impact Deduction to reduce our grenade cooldown with powered melee hits. Resistance wise, as always, go with resistance that match the damage type or activity that you're doing. Then for our legs, we're going to be using Absolution to reduce all abilities when we pick up an orb. We're going to be using a Harmonic Scavenger just to get more ammo when we pick up things for like our heavy weapon for Thunderlord. And then Recuperation just to replenish health. Obviously, it's not really going to work in Nether, but we do get the health regen from Knockout, so it's okay. And then lastly, as always, we want to be using Reaper. So when you kill someone after using your class ability, you get an orb of power. And then we're going to be using Powerful Attraction to collect orbs of power when we activate our class ability. Then we're going to be using Bomber to reduce our cooldown when we use our class ability. So tons of ways just to build back into Amplified Bolt Charge class ability and then just ability in general. So this has been a ton of fun, and I'm super stoked to continue to see how Bolt Charge can stack up into further in-game content, because it's already been doing really well. Especially, I've noticed a lot of people doing it in contest dungeon, it was wild to watch. So if you stuck around, feel free to check out any of our other videos, like the one we got listed over here. But at the end of the day, I hope you guys enjoy the video. If you want to check out the build, feel free to give it a shot. There's a dim link down below. Or if you've got an idea on how to make it better, hell, drop a comment and let me know what you guys think. But until then, I will catch you in the next one.